Today, our speaker is Erica Huang. Erica has a unique blend of experiences from the IT industry and education sector. After graduating from UBC with both degrees in computer science and education, she worked as a software developer, a high school mathematics and computer science teacher, and a curriculum developer. Erica is now the BC Regional Manager of Microsoft's High School Computer Science Outreach Program, TEALS, Technology Education and Literacy in Schools. Erica has recently completed her Master's of Science in Mathematics Education at SFU, researching how BC educators incorporate coding and computational thinking in high school classrooms. Everyone, let's welcome Erica.
Thank you, Christine, for the introduction. And hi, everyone. My name is Erica Huang. And as Christine mentioned, I am currently the regional manager of Microsoft's TEALS program, which is Microsoft's High School Computer Science Outreach program. However, for today's presentation, I would like to put my researcher's hat on and share with you the topic of computational thinking in the K-12 BC curriculum, which is my master's thesis research from SFU is based on. So before we start, I just like to do kind of a overview of my career journey. So growing up, I seem to always be kind of taking the road less travel. So I graduated from UBC with a degree in computer science. And at the time, I often was sitting in the fourth year seminar course as the only female student in the room. And later on, I became a software developer, decided to quit my job, and went back to school to get a degree in education. And then I taught for about 7 years in the Burnaby School District as a math and computer science and Mandarin teacher. And then later on decided to pursue a master's at SFU in the math education program. However, as a rare computer science major among my math teaching colleagues, I decided to do my research focusing on the area of coding and computational thinking. And I don't know of many other researchers in BC that are doing the same thing. And eventually I landed into a job opportunity working for Microsoft TEALS as their CS Outreach Program Manager. So I'm happy to have an opportunity to combine both my passions for computer science and education together in my current role. So just a quick overview of the agenda for today. I will first give everybody an overview of computational thinking in the BC's K-12 curriculum, share with you findings from my research and thoughts on future direction. And lastly, I'll open for Q&A, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions related to my career journey and also related to my research. So if you're a parent, a teacher, an educator, a scientist, or just someone in the community interested in STEM education, I'm hoping that I'll be able to answer your question. So first, I would like to talk about why I decided to do the research project. So first of all, BC added coding and computational thinking to our curriculum standards back in 2016. However, as many of you might know, we don't see all the schools all of a sudden started to do coding and computational thinking in the classroom. And my own backgrounds in mathematics, education, and computer science led me to believe that there's definitely a lot of learning in the area and a lot of things that we can still explore. And also with my personal experience, using coding as a way to engage students in my math classrooms led me to believe that this is a topic worth researching. And feel free to put any questions in the chat, and I hope to get to answer. If I don't get to answer them during the presentation, I'll do that at the end. So I would like to first talk about what is computational thinking, and I would like to ask everybody's participation. So what I'm going to do is call a waterfall chat, and don't worry about putting in the wrong answer because all of these answers have a good reason for being on here. So basically what a waterfall chat is giving everybody about 10 seconds to think. So I'm going to go over the question, and I'm going to pause for 10 seconds and let everybody to have the answer ready in the chat. And then when I say waterfall, I would like you to put in the chat your best educational guess of to the question. So here's the question. When did the idea of computational thinking start? A, over 4,500 years ago, B, the 1960s, C, the 1980s, or D, the year 2006. So I'm going to give everybody 10 seconds. And thank you for waiting. I hope you have your answer ready in the chat. And now waterfall. Oh, we have a variety of answers. Great. And thank you all for participating. And in fact, so I see A, B, and D as answers. And in fact, these are all good answers. And then let me talk about the significance of each of these answers, and hopefully give you an overview of the history of computational thinking. So for those of you that chose A, and it is definitely a great answer, because humans definitely started thinking computationally way before computers were invented, right? So it is a human endeavor to try to improve our process and calculate faster and avoid errors and coming up with algorithms. So A is definitely a great answer. And some of you chose B, and B also is a good answer because as you may imagine, computational thinking is very closely related to the discipline of computer science. And the 1960s is when the discipline of computer science started to come together. And in fact, the first university CS department was established in the 60s. And also, over in the science department, the scientists also started to think about the role of computing plays in their work. So in fact, during that time, there were discussions about adding computation to the two pillars of sciences, which are theory and experiment, because our scientists started to see the significance of computation in their work. And nowadays, we see the discipline computational biology, computational physics, computational geometry, and so on. So certainly, a lot of scientists back then already started to think about computation in the 60s. Nobody picked C, the 80s, but 80s could be a good answer as well, because quite often the term computational thinking was said to be first mentioned in the book by Dr. Seymour Papert, in his book Mindstorms. And he is a professor. He was a professor from MIT that was kind of a pioneer in the area of bringing programming into school to help students learn, in particular mathematics, but it could apply to other subjects as well. And several of you picked 2006. And my guess is that you might have read Dr. Jeanette Wing's paper titled Computational Thinking, which led to the resurgence of computer science education in the past decade, and led to a lot of the discussions among educators and policymakers and people in the community about teaching kids to code and teaching kids to think computationally. So 2006 is definitely a good answer as well. And thank you all for participating. And I hope that kind of gave you an overview of computational thinking. But what is computational thinking? So with Dr. Jeanette Wing's work, that led to a lot of discussions. One of the things that she was critiqued for was that she didn't provide a definition of computational thinking in her paper. So after a few years, she decided to publish another paper to follow up. And in that paper, she defined computational thinking as the thought processes involved in formulating problems and their solutions, so that the solutions are in the form that can be effectively carried out by an information processing agent. Now, I know that this definition is quite packed, and I would like to highlight 3 phrases here for you. The first part is formulating problems and their solutions. I'm a former teacher. In the classroom, I always like to tell the students that, no, you're not just finding the right answer, right? The process of solving the problems is important too. So it is great to see that Wing included in her definition that it's about formulating the problems as well, not just finding a solution. The second piece I want to highlight is the word effectively. So if we're teaching students to think computationally, it's not just about finding one answer, or the right answer. It's about finding a solution and be able to critically reflect on this problem solving process so that students can find multiple approach and see which one is a more effective solution. And lastly is the term information processing agent. So an information processing agent could be a computer, could be a mobile phone, could be a robot, could be any digital device, could be a GPS system. However, it could be a person as well, because humans can process information as well. And this allows the definition to be broader because in the classroom, coding or programming is often seen as a vehicle to teach computational thinking, but it doesn't necessarily have to involve the computers. We can get the kids to come up with a series of steps to make a peanut butter jam sandwich and call that an algorithm. So this is a way to teach coding unplugged. And by this definition, using the term information processing agent instead of computer kind of make teaching computational thinking more broadly applicable in our daily, everyday lives and also in other school subjects. So what does that mean to us? And in fact, when BC started to bring coding and computational thinking into our curriculum, the definition by Wing was the one that our curriculum standards were based on. And we actually see computational thinking in two areas. One is in applied design skills and technologies, or ADST. If you were studying in BC's high schools, you might remember this as the business and IT department, but now it has a new name so that it's more inclusive. And also, we can see computational thinking and coding in mathematics. So even though when the former premier announced that, oh, K-12, we should all teach coding, but if we go and visit the curriculum standards, we will see coding and computational thinking more explicitly mentioned in the curriculum from grade 6 to 12. And in particular, for ADST, at the grade 11 and 12 level, there is the computer programming course. And in mathematics, there's a computer science course. So the two streams give kind of two different flavors. In ADST, so thinking that it was formerly the business ed department, so the focus is more on design thinking. How do you create a product that works for your customer? Whereas in the mathematics stream, the computer science courses, in my personal opinion, kind of represent like a typical first-year computer science course, but it at an easier level that is kind of adaptable to high school students, with more of the focus on theory and algorithm and mathematics. And in fact, in all our math curriculum, there's the mandate to teach financial literacy. So a potential problem a math teacher could give to the students in the computer science class could be maybe try to write a computer program to calculate student loans or budgets or mortgage and so on. So the new addition to the BC curriculum certainly motivated me to do more research. And the other reason I wanted to do to learn more is because if we open our BC curriculum document, let's say that you go to see the Math 8 curriculum, you will see one line under the header reasoning and analyzing that says include coding. And that's it, right? There's really not much guidance. And I was curious in what other teachers are doing in their classroom. So for my research, I surveyed high school math teachers from 2 different school districts in Metro Vancouver. And I observed and interviewed 3 of the teachers. And then I analyzed the data. So there are survey responses, the field notes when I was doing the classroom observation, and also the interview notes, try to find common themes using Roosevelt's structuring features of classroom practice framework. So this particular framework, it can go into technical details I don't need to cover, but basically gave me a few areas such as the working environment, the time economy, and like the activity format and so on, provide me some different focus areas when I was in the classroom to observe the teacher. And to introduce you to 3 of the teachers that I was fortunate enough to work with, who have been very thoughtful in their teaching practice. The first teacher was Ada. She used a programming language called Snap, which is a block-based programming language. And she got her grade 9 students to create spiral art for the unit on similarity and polygons. The second teacher is Grace, and she had a mini coding unit in her Math A class, and I was able to observe her in her second lesson. So in her first lesson, she get the students to program using the microbits, which is a physical programming device that comes with a block-based coding environment. And she got the students to first program the microbit so that it can show numbers and then show a symbol when the number is a multiple of 3. And on the second day, when I observed her, she got the student to extend the problem so that it shows a smiley face when it's a multiple of 3, a sad face is a multiple of 5, and if it's a multiple of 3 and 5, for example, 15, it shows a heart. And the third teacher, Julia, also used the microbit with her grade 8 students, got her students to program the rock, paper, scissors on the microbit. And the students also did a coin flip program. And what Julia did was to get the students to use the tools they program. So the students had to pair up and do rock, paper, scissors, and coin flips 20 times and collect the data as a whole class. So as you can see in the picture here that all the data points were shown on the whiteboard, and Julia was able to use this as a context to discuss probability concepts with the students. And as you notice, all 3 teachers that I was able to observe use block-based programming as their tool. And I was actually kind of curious in that as well. And I asked them specifically in the interview questions. But here are some highlights of the findings from our research. So one is that the theme of problem solving really emerged from the teacher responses. And I was actually a little bit surprised by that because I saw my fellow math teachers, when they see the term computation, they may connect it with words like data or quantities or numbers, but none of that came up. A lot of them talk about problem solving strategies like breaking down a problem into smaller, more manageable parts, or maybe recognizing patterns and so on. And 2 is that teachers included coding primarily use block-based coding. So among the teachers that I surveyed, only 6 teachers said in the survey that they did some programming in their classes. And only 1 teacher said that he or she used a programming language called BASIC in her classroom. However, there are also some teachers that took a different approach, and they kind of see coding as they have a broader definition of coding and gave using writing formulas in Excel spreadsheets as an example of doing coding in math classroom. Third is that teachers highlighted the lack of extensions as a major challenge. So in my interviews with the teachers, all of them said that they wish they know enough about text-based programming. So Julia was the more experienced out of the 3, and she was confident in her own ability to learn to program. However, it was simply too overwhelming at the time that she stick was using microbits and block-based. So I can definitely see this as an area that teachers need more support. And the fourth point is that the teachers had to be very thoughtful when choosing a working environment if they were given an opportunity. So out of the 3 teachers, Ada was using the computer lab. Grace was able to book a laptop card and have the students use laptops in her own classroom. And then Julia did coding on 2 days. On the first day, she took the student to the library. And on the second day, she booked a laptop card and used the laptops in her own classroom. Now, based on the teacher's feedback, teachers seem to find that using laptops in their own classroom is more comfortable because they are familiar with the environment and the students are familiar with the environment. Also, in Ada's case, I was very surprised when I walked into the school's computer lab to find out that her lab doesn't come with a projector, which makes her job a lot harder, right? Because she didn't have the ability to demo the STAP program to the students and show kind of examples of the spiral art. So the students kind of do a more exploratory approach when they were trying to solve the problems. And number 5 is that coding provided a different context for teachers to have conversation about math concepts in their classroom. So for example, Ada pointed out that she no longer had to ask students how to calculate an interior angle of a regular pentagon because the students were making it happen in their program visually on the screen. So it certainly changed the way she was having conversation with the students. And Julia pointed out that by students programming the microbits themselves, they had the ability to change the probability weightings. For example, scissors could appear more frequently than rock and paper, and it gave her the context to discuss the idea of unfairness. And this is not something that she could do if she just asked the student to play rock, paper, scissors and conduct a probability experiment that way. And lastly, one interesting thing I noticed was that despite the teachers saying in the surveys that they think computational thinking is about problem solving, but I didn't see teachers explicitly teaching these CT practices. So the teachers talk about breaking a problem down to smaller, more manageable parts. Teachers talk about helping students to you doing coding can help you to learn to do pattern matching and be able to generalize a concept. But I did not observe teachers explicitly teaching those. I think there's the assumption that by doing the coding tasks, students will kind of automatically just learn how to problem solve that way. But based on research, it's actually quite difficult to do. So this will be another area I'm more interested in exploring in the future for sure. So just some future research directions. After the research project, I certainly have more questions than answers. Out of the million questions, I think there are 3 that I really like to focus on. One is, as mentioned earlier, the teachers are finding it hard because we have such a wide range of abilities in the classroom when the teacher wants to teach coding. One of the teachers even commented that she thinks she has some students that are actually better than her when she was trying to incorporate coding and computational thinking in the classroom. So how could we support teachers transition from doing block-based coding to text-based programming? And 2 is how are teachers across BC implemented coding in the secondary mathematics classrooms? So with the scope of my master's research, I wasn't able to reach out to more districts, especially districts in the rural areas. So even though there were differences among the districts in Metro Vancouver, I'm very interested in learning more about how teachers in other areas in the province trying to tackle the same problem by incorporating coding in the classroom and trying to implement the new curriculum. And lastly, how does the new computer science course or courses change the landscape of CS education in BC? So the computer programming course I mentioned earlier from ADST was historically in place, but just with the update in the 2016 new curriculum update. However, the computer science course in the mathematics stream is completely new, right? And there are definitely places in that course that can lead to very interesting areas I can explore. For example, it was mandated that we had to teach financial literacy, as I mentioned earlier. Also, using programming to model mathematics problem, which is brand new to our teachers. So this would be definitely another area that I could potentially look into if I'm going to do further research. All right, so that's kind of all I wanted to share. And thank you all for being here. And now I guess it'll be a Q&A session. And feel free to post your questions in the chat if you would like to unmute, that's good too.
We have a question, Erica, from Ghana. Do you have any recommendations for a future science teacher on how to incorporate computational thinking into the teaching practice?
Okay, thank you. I think that's a great question. And even though my focus is more in math education, I certainly had a lot of informal conversation with teachers in other subject areas. So in terms of sciences, I think science is another area that we could potentially incorporate computational thinking. As I mentioned earlier in the introduction, that a lot of scientists are definitely seeing more use of programming in their work. And I would say that at the K-12 level, there are definitely a few organizations that you could connect with. Science World is great at organizing professional development workshops. So I think they have a program called Tech Up. And if you go to the website, and if you're interested, can feel free to connect with me afterwards. I can kind of share that with you as well. They basically organize regular workshops to help teachers to teach computer science or computational thinking in the classroom. And also over the summer, they organize kind of a 5-day STEAM days of summer, kind of like a teacher conference, so that teachers can learn more about computational thinking and how it applies to their subject areas. There are also a few other local organizations. There's Canada Learning Co. There's Callistos. And maybe I think, Christine, I'm not sure if you have a way to connect with the participants afterwards. I have a long list I could share with our participants as well, if that's of interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll take your list and send it out in a follow-up email, Erica. We also have Annalise. Annalise, you want to ask the question? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is really cool. It's given me a different way to think about all these things. I've been in this thinking space, but I didn't know how to explain it. I'm a biologist, so I'm always thinking about how to teach science, and usually a lot of the data science concepts and math concepts. And I really like this computational way of thinking because it's applicable to all the fields of science, and it's a really nice way to weave it in together. So I guess I was wondering, like, you're looking at this mostly with the coding curriculum.
Right.
And you said your next steps was to look into like the other parts of science, or where do you see that going?
I have so many future research directions, but I think because my background is math education, I'm not an expert in the sciences. So I think I will still kind of focus in the in the math and the business at kind of courses, because these are the two courses kind of mandated or really are part of the BC curriculum. That being said, I can totally see computational thinking in all other school subjects, and sciences especially, because for example, I showed the tool microbit earlier. There's actually like additional kind of accessories. For example, you can connect it with like a carbon dioxide detector, and you can kind of use that to do experiments in the classroom. So actually, if you go to the microbit's website, they have actually a lot of ready set science kind of lesson plans already that teachers can use in the classroom. And as mentioned earlier, Science World also has a lot of great resources. And I personally probably won't be looking to activities for in the sciences, primarily because my background is in math and computer science. However, I have to admit that in my first year of teaching, I got asked to teach chemistry. And I have so much respect for my colleagues in the science department, because it's definitely a very different mindset and setup when you're trying to run a course with the lab. But I certainly would be able to, if you're interested in connecting, I have several contacts that I think you might want to talk to if you're interested in doing more computational thinking in science classrooms. Another person I could recommend is Dr. Richard Hashiro at the Quest University. I think he did a project with Callistos, and they also have a lot of activity designed for science teachers. They basically, I'm not sure if you're familiar with computer programming at all, but their program uses the Jupyter Notebook, which is kind of a online platform, like a digital notebook, and they embedded Python programming there and can do like data and statistics analysis kind of in that platform. So I think there might be some cool projects there as well. Hopefully that helps and answers the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe let me stop sharing my screen so I can actually see people.
Oh, Erica, I have a question.
Okay.
So I've noticed that one of your findings is that teachers need more support, one, in terms of education, getting more CS skills. Second was that there's a lack of physical resources. For example, you mentioned a teacher not having a projector. And, that's quite a challenge. So my question is, looking at your other hat as Microsoft TEALS manager, how does that program actually help?
Okay. So my role at TEALS or Microsoft Philanthropy's computer science outreach program. Basically, we support teachers in schools by pairing the teachers with mentors from the software industry. And so basically, Microsoft provides the training and teaching resources, lesson plans, and we have like 3 different courses. There's one in block-based coding, there's a Python course, and also a Java course, because we know how difficult it is to teach a new course. So what happened is that, for example, one of our partner schools is John Oliver Secondary in Vancouver. We actually had a social study teacher who was very brave, but also keen in learning to program and teach her students computer science. So we pair her up with 4 different volunteers from Microsoft, from EA, and SAP. So the volunteers are kind of like mentors to our students, but also mentors to our teachers, so that while the teachers were learning computer science and team teaching with our kind of industry professionals, they kind of try to build capacity and be able to build a computer science program at the school. So for the courses I talked about earlier, the computer programming courses or the computer science courses, TEALS is basically kind of an industry effort trying to support the schools by giving teachers resources and also mentors to help them establish a program in the classroom.
Thank you. And are there any other questions from the audience? From our participants?
Hi, I'm Sumo. I work in computing science at Simon Fraser University. I come at this, I'm interested in this as partly as a parent of kids who've been through the school system, partly for someone who works in post-secondary education, partly as someone who's very interested in women in computing science. I've been working with our student group for over 15 years, women in computing science. And I just giving a little background. So one question that occurs to me is, you said they weren't teaching computational thinking as a concept. And I'm wondering, when it is taught, how explicitly is it taught? Do you tell the students that you're teaching them a framework while you teach them the framework, if you know what I mean? Obviously we're talking here about the K-12 or 6 to 12, or, we're talking about the public school system, that age group. But I'm interested in it because personally I like meta, and my kids have thrived on meta. So if I tell them what I'm teaching them, sort of what they're learning somewhere early in the process, I like it better. And I'm wondering if that works for the computational thinking as well, or is it off-putting, or how does that fit in?
Yeah, to simply answer that question, I'm not sure. Because I think it's through my master's research I realized that, maybe we should try to teach those concepts more explicitly in the classroom. And I noticed, and I don't have evidence to back this up, but I personally found that the elementary teachers I speak to are doing more of that in the classroom. So they're more explicit with the kids. Whereas the high school teachers, and as you saw the 3 examples, but the teacher is still trying to incorporate coding, but their goal is to teach mathematics. So I didn't see as much of the computational thinking being taught explicitly, even though the students were definitely exploring in that area. And I think if I were back to the classroom again, what I would love to try is that when I incorporate coding or doing coding activities with the students, I want to point out to them when I have the opportunity, maybe even introduce them to keywords in computational thinking. I was worried that this presentation is going to get too technical, so I cut some content. But Selby and Woolard, who are researchers in the UK, they basically, because there's a lot of debates on the definition of computational thinking, but they were trying to look for common themes. They come up with 5 different abilities. There was abstraction, decomposition, generalization, algorithmic thinking. And I think it might be helpful when we're working with students and teach the students these words and tell them that, hey, no, now we encounter this problem, and the idea of decomposition is that when we're solving a problem, it could be a coding problem or math problem or science problem, it's always a good idea to break the problem down to smaller parts, right? And I think, but then because I haven't really tried in the classroom, so I'm not sure at the moment whether that is going to be beneficial. And my guess is that it will be, but I'm not sure. That's kind of my answer. And it's interesting because I have to say that through my research, I certainly had a lot of identity crisis because I have a background in computer science and also in math education. And there are definitely a lot of different perspectives. So I have to say a lot of times, the more I read, I'm like, the more I'm not sure if I know what I'm doing. But I think this is definitely an area with a lot of different discussions and debates. So I think it's also hard because even based on our current research that I was able to find, there are a lot of conflicting results. So I guess my simple answer is that I'd love to try that in the classroom and see what happens, but I'm not sure.
And my other question is more explicitly gender related. You know, what gender effects have you seen or heard about in terms of this, or would you like to look at? To what hypotheses would you like to put forward, or anything like that?
Yeah, I certainly no. First of all, I think for those of you that joined a little later, I mentioned at the beginning that when I was fourth year at UBC, I sat in the class as the only female student in the room in one of my fourth year courses, right? So, you know, I think inspiring more girls to pursue, at least explore computer science, definitely one of my main goals. I personally feel, and this is also feedback from the teachers as well, it's not so much about like gender. It could be like, you know, for other underrepresented groups as well. But coding certainly had a way of engage a wider range of students and make it like makes, for example, mathematics more easily accessible to kids. So I certainly see there's the potential by introducing computational thinking in the classroom in a very easily accessible way can help us reach a wider range of students. And also I want to mention that when I was teaching in Burnaby in high schools, I taught the AP computer science course. I had a class of 19 grade 12 boys. And I was a little disappointed because I thought as a female teacher, I was able to recruit more girls in my classrooms. But I also saw that because AP Computer Science A is a kind of rigorous, it's Java programming. And I had 3 girls that signed up to my course at the beginning. But because there were, 19 other boys in the classroom, and I don't think the girls thought that they couldn't do it, but when I asked them, they're like, no, I don't know why I'm here or why is this interesting, right? So I think there's definitely a long way to go in that area for sure, but I would love to help in any way I can to help reach out to more girls and at least introduce computer science to them.
Can I just chime in on this point?
Yes.
That was interesting that you say computer science is kind of a gateway to help people engage with mathematics more. I found that if you frame computer science as data science, you also bridge more of the females into computer science. So maybe it's like a cascade of just like you start reframing all of these things to get more of them. Because as a biologist too, we struggle with the mathematics and the coding as well. So like, yeah, it's kind of from the opposite end, but
yeah. Thank you for offering that, because I know as you can see, there are a lot of different perspectives. Because coming from the math background, I certainly would think from kind of a math educator's perspective, and Elise is a biology educator, and certainly would come from a science educator's perspective. Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because I think data science definitely it's becoming a kind of the buzz phrase in the industry and in education as well.
I was just wondering, where do you see the role of scientists like me engaging more in helping teachers? Because I know they're very overwhelmed with trying to come up with all these activities and synthesize materials. Like, what's our role in helping with some of this? Because for me, like thinking of computational activities is fairly simple, but like, yeah, I don't know.
Thank you. And that's wonderful to hear, because quite often when I talk to teachers, there are a lot more teachers saying that this is so hard, we don't know what to do. So it would be wonderful if, simply like running a workshop like this, if you're able to share kind of the activities you do in the classroom, present at Pro-D workshops. And I had the opportunity to present at the event at Science World. I mentioned the summer as well, just share my learning with other teachers. And as you know, I didn't have all the answers either. We are all kind of trying to wrap our heads around this new curriculum, even though it's not that new anymore. But the computer science 11 courses is implemented for the first time this year, right? Because there was kind of like a slow rollout. In 2016, it was like, I think K-7 or K-8 or K-9, and then it started to every year they add a new grade, right? So we don't implement the computer science 12 until next year, right? So there's still a lot of kind of exploring at this stage, but I also think this is a good opportunity because now the policymakers has put the curriculum in place. We have to spend some time to figure out how to do this in the classroom.
I just wanted to say hi. I couldn't join earlier. I was with students.
Anyway. Yeah, no worries. It's good to see you here. Thank you for coming.
So I'll touch base with you later. And I since it's recorded, I'm hoping to listen to the beginning, which I missed. But anyway, and I'll touch base.
Thanks for joining us, Diana.
Yeah.
Any other questions, reactions? If there are none, any last thoughts, Erica?
No, well, thank you all for coming. It's great to see you all here. And I guess now we have a group of educators who are interested in the topic. And I certainly would love to connect if you're open to connect later on. Because I do have a list of resources, especially for Annalise and Ghana who are in teaching sciences. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're interested in looking for more resources. I'm definitely not an expert in science education, but I know other people that are and might potentially help in that way.
And I also see some professional development opportunities for our SCWIST members, our scientists who want to get into coding. CS education. Thank you so much, Erica. And please, everyone, I just typed in the chat link to our Google document, Google form. Please answer the brown bag evaluation survey to help us improve the future events, and also to give her feedback on Erica on what was most interesting, which was most helpful from her talk, and anything that she could improve with her presentation in the future. Again, thank you so much, and I wish you a happy day. It's not raining, so it's still a good time to take to have a refreshing walk. And one more thing, I just want to also mention that Annalise is the founder, and she holds a monthly book session, book club? Annalise, would you want to talk about it just for a minute?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I host the Vancouver STEMinist Book Club. I will be talking about it in 2 weeks in the brown bag session, so I'll get to be Erica shortly. We read a book every 2 months. We're reading Radium Girls right now, and then I'm setting the date right now, so the Eventbrite should be up soon. We'll be reading Vagina Bible for January. I switch up all the types of science books we read. And it's usually either written by female science authors or about female scientists, and it's people from all walks of life, and we just chat about science. So it's really fun.
Yeah, it's a great discussion session. We always have limited time, right? There's very good interaction and engagement. Oh, and one more thing, please spread the word. We're SCWIST and Science World is having a STEM quiz for Halloween as an alternative to other fun, not COVID safe activities. It's Saturday, October 31. Thank you all. I won't take much of your time. See you again next time. Bye.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Erica.
That was great.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I also like it's a smaller group. Everybody was just comfortable and the
Right.
discussion was
Right.
rich. Yeah.
I was worried that it's gonna go too long, so I cut a lot of stuff. I hope
Yeah.
that still kind of gave a
No, actually, I was like, "What? The presentation is so short." I just wanted you to like have more.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Right.
but actually for a brown bag, that was perfect length because then
Right.
the questions, the forum was it
Yeah,
gives more time to people.
right. Because I feel like I'm kind of talking to a screen,
Yeah,
which I'm used to, but still, like, so it's hard to when there's no like response, so
yeah,
which is why I wanted to do the chat. But I'm glad to see group of educators and
yeah,
someone saying that teaching is simple. So great. I think we need more teachers like that to help in the community. Yeah. Oh, something I forgot to mention was that I think the one of the things that I really hope to see happen is the teacher training program, because I really felt that
yeah, yeah. But it's
there's
only science world and then a few and the pro
yeah
degrees.
yeah but it is hard, right? Because there's already an overcrowded curriculum or things to teach in the
Yeah,
classroom. So we're asking a lot out of teachers when we're giving them this new curriculum to teach, right? So yeah, so definitely still areas to explore for sure. Yeah.
but how about like, oh, I guess this is what you actually do with Microsoft Deals, right?
Right.
Having mentors go in, join the
Right.
classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
hmm.
But we're actually still recording.
Oh yeah, that's right.